Well, it's time for the Ozzie show. Failed mayoral candidate Ozzie Gonzalez is going to give us a little speech here.
To the board, to the general manager and staff. We had a meeting as the Transit Equity Advisory Committee last week on June 16th, and several items were discussed. And again, we had great participation on the side of the attendance from our member organizations. And we did have a chance to talk first and foremost about bylaws. There's been an effort within TIAC to really focus on how to increase the value and the benefit that we derive from having such a great collection of member organizations that represent the community at the table where we can talk about things like policing, budgets, and other issues. So we spoke about bylaws and trying to clarify the distinction between a member organization and the individual representatives that are going to sit at TIAC to represent those organizations. We're looking at clarifying what the terms are, the term limits, as well as the expectations of individual representatives, again, so that we have, I think, a strengthening and ever-strengthening relationship with the organizations that are at the table, many of whom we've had the benefit of hearing from today in the public forum. So in this last week's meeting, in addition to discussing the general bylaws a little bit, as we dig into that further, we did get into some actual business of the agency. We spoke about the budget forums that were occurring throughout June, provided some updates on those budget forums, the listening sessions that were referred to, and I think that the comments we heard today are good examples of ways in which we could dig deeper into how to make those listening sessions better, for example. We also spoke about T2020's Youth Pass. There was an update to...
Oh, yeah, they've thrown in the Youth Pass into the 2020 bond. They're going to throw in as much as they possibly can to make people vote for this monstrosity. And maybe that, people are pretty dumb. I think it's pretty obvious how many stupid people there are out there, just misinformed.
The group on the Metro bond measure and how the Youth Pass component is structured as...
It's hard to believe anybody would vote for a tax increase now, but apparently, well, I don't believe the elections, they're not really representative. They always word these measures so that, like, a property tax increase. Well, most people don't own property, and they don't connect the dots that eventually this will cause their rents to increase. So they vote for it. These technocrats are very skilled at deceiving the public. They've had hundreds of years to perfect this. Anybody in their right mind would not give a penny to the government. That's one way to stop this atrocity, is to stop voting for these things and stop voting for the two parties. You need a massive movement to stop believing in the two-party system to change things. And to stop voting for these taxes. Stop giving these people your money. You're out of your fucking mind.
As it currently stands. So there was some discussion about the level of funding, how that funding will be utilized by youth throughout the system, and the concept of the phasing approach that I'm not sure if you've become familiar with, but the phasing was also discussed with the TIAC member organizations. We also brought an update on the equity lens work that TriMet is working on as an agency.
The equity lens.
So the language behind the equity lens was presented.
Doesn't mean anything. The equity lens means nothing. Nothing. It's a neoliberal idea of something that doesn't exist.
And there was some discussion about how that equity lens would play out, how it would be implemented throughout the agency. So I look forward to hearing more meaningful feedback on that, as well as policing. That's a topic that was brought, of course, in the meeting in light of the recent discussions happening nationwide, but especially here in the community. Excuse me. The The department gave an update on the transit police system contract, and there was a presentation and a quick overview on the status of the agreement as it currently stands. So there was some discussion again about that.
Well, what was the discussion?
And those were those were the topics that were discussed in this last meeting. And in closing, I just want to point out the opportunities we have moving forward. We receive a lot of feedback by email as board members. I'd like to acknowledge that as a native Spanish speaker, I'd like to invite anyone out there and go on record to feel free to write in Spanish if they would like to bring direct feedback and are struggling to find other mechanisms to do so.
Yeah, that community is completely has no representation at all. The Hispanic community of Portland has got no representation anywhere, really.
I'd be happy to do that, and I'll say it en español. Si gustan, por favor, escríbanme en español como dirigente
Nice, Ozzie.
de la mesa directiva. Yo recibo esos
Nobody watching
mensajes
this
con todo gusto.
is a Spanish speaker. Because you don't even, TriMet doesn't even announce these board meetings. Nobody even knows this is up, except a small group of us. I mean, TriMet never tweet. Oh, by the way, public, we're tweeting to our 60,000 followers that there's a board meeting posted. No, they don't do that. And I was going to ask them, but I didn't know there was a meeting.
To English, but I just wanted to point that out, and I think these are ways in which we could do a better job of making what we can make accessible to the public available. And I think there's no reason on earth anyone who speaks Spanish or any other tongue that the board members speak should feel free to write emails.
And repeat, Ozzie, old buddy, nobody knows these board meetings are happening because you and your TriMet executives do not tell anybody. Nobody knows what's going on here.
In that language. I appreciate the feedback, and that concludes the TIAC report.
Thank you very much, Director Gonzalez.
Well, as usual,